The message came to Earth on a Tuesday morning in March. Ambassador Ithkana of the Galactic Concordance stood in the center of the United Nations Assembly Hall, her body shimmering like a pillar of living crystal. Light passed through her form and scattered into rainbows across the walls. She was beautiful in a way that made humans feel small. "We've completed our assessment of your species," she said. Her voice did not come from any mouth. It simply appeared in the minds of everyone present, soft and clear like a bell ringing underwater. "The results have been reviewed by the High Council." Director General Marcus Webb sat in the front row with his hands folded in his lap. He had spent 3 months preparing for this moment. Earth had joined the galactic community only 2 years ago, and this assessment would determine humanity's place among the stars. He allowed himself a small smile. Humans had worked hard to impress the Concordance. They had shown their best scientists, their greatest achievements, their most ambitious projects. Ithkana raised one crystalline arm, and a holographic display appeared in the air above her. Numbers and symbols floated there, along with a long list of species names. "The Galactic Concordance evaluates all spacefaring civilizations using standard metrics," she explained. "Psionic potential measures mental abilities and telepathic strength. Biological optimization measures physical efficiency and evolutionary advancement. Technological inheritance measures access to ancestral knowledge. Harmonic resonance measures connection to the universal energy field." Webb nodded along. He did not fully understand these categories, but he trusted that humanity had done well enough. "There are currently 4,231 spacefaring civilizations in our records," Ithkana continued. "Each has been assigned a ranking based on these metrics." The holographic display shifted. Species names scrolled past faster than the human eye could follow. Finally, the list stopped at the very bottom. Humanity has been ranked 4,231st. Ithkana announced that. The assembly hall fell completely silent. Webb stared at the display. The words, "Human Species, rank 4,231, 4,231, glowed in soft blue light. Dead last. They had scored dead last out of every civilization in the known galaxy. "There must be some mistake," he said, his voice hollow. Ithkana turned to look at him. Her crystalline face had no expression, but something in her posture suggested pity. "There is no mistake," she said gently. "Your species possesses no psionic abilities. You cannot read minds or communicate through thought. Your bodies are fragile and inefficient. Your lifespans are extremely short by galactic standards. You have no genetic memory or ancestral knowledge banks. You developed your technology through random experimentation rather than inheriting it from previous generations." She paused, as if searching for kind words. "Your species reached space through crude chemical rockets. You used explosive combustion to leave your own atmosphere. In 12,000 years of evaluating civilizations, we have never seen anything quite like it." Webb felt his face grow hot. "We worked hard to reach the stars. We sacrificed and struggled and dreamed." "Yes," Ithkana agreed. "That is perhaps the strangest thing about your species. You achieved spaceflight despite having no natural advantages. It is both impressive and deeply concerning." "Concerning?" "The galaxy can be dangerous. Species without natural gifts rarely survive long." The High Council's decision came 3 days later. Humanity was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Concordance. This meant observer status with no voting rights, limited trade access, and restrictions on travel beyond their home system. They were not forbidden from participating in galactic affairs, but they were not truly welcomed either. The human delegation returned to Earth with heavy hearts. News of the rankings spread quickly. Some people were angry. Some were ashamed. Others insisted that the assessment was unfair that humans had qualities the concordance could not measure. But mostly, people tried to move forward. There was nothing else to do. 6 months passed. Humanity adapted to its new position at the bottom of galactic society. They traded what little they could, learned what they were allowed to learn, and kept their heads down. Then the disasters began. The first warning came from the orbital defense grid. Admiral Chen Wei received the alert at 3:47 a.m. Earth time. A rogue AI had infiltrated the system's core programming. Defense satellites were going offline one by one, and nothing the technicians tried could stop it. Before Chen could even begin to address this crisis, a second alert arrived. A synthetic plague had appeared on 3 human colony worlds simultaneously. It spread through air and water, causing fever, confusion, and eventually death. Medical teams were completely overwhelmed. The third disaster hit 6 hours later. A hyperspace rupture opened near Jupiter, tearing a hole in the fabric of space itself. The rupture was growing. Scientists estimated that it would swallow the entire solar system within 3 months if left unchecked. 3 impossible disasters. All at once. All targeting humanity. In the observation vessel, hidden behind Luna, Ifkana watched the chaos unfold on her display screens. She had witnessed many species face their crucible over her long career. Most never realized they were being tested. The Concordance manufactured these crises carefully, designing them to push civilizations to their breaking point. The weak species crumbled. They fought among themselves, made terrible decisions, and eventually collapsed into chaos. The Concordance would then step in to help them, guiding their reconstruction in ways that made them dependent and controllable. The strong species used their natural gifts to overcome the challenges. The telepathic Valith had coordinated their response through perfect mental unity. The immortal Ormundi had patiently calculated optimal solutions. Each successful civilization had leveraged whatever made them special, but humans had nothing special. No telepathy. No ancestral wisdom. No hyperspace intuition. Nothing. Ifkana recorded her initial observations in her official report. The human species shows immediate signs of disunity. Government factions are arguing openly. Military leaders are disagreeing on basic strategy. Scientists are debating competing theories in public broadcasts. Initial assessment suggests total collapse within 30 standard days. She felt something that might have been sadness. Humans were strange creatures, struggling and striving despite their limitations. She had found them almost endearing in their stubbornness, but the galaxy had no room for endearing. The galaxy only had room for strength. She settled in to watch humanity fall. The first week was chaos. Ifkana had observed many species in crisis, but she had never seen anything quite like this. Human governments shouted at each other across communication channels. Military commanders issued contradicting orders. Scientists argued publicly about theories and solutions, sometimes descending into personal insults. On Earth, the President of the United States gave a speech calling for unity. The European Union issued a statement disagreeing with her approach. China announced its own independent task force. Russia demanded more information before committing resources. Smaller nations scrambled to protect their own interests. They cannot even agree on what to do, Ifkana noted in her report. Basic coordination appears beyond their capability. The lack of telepathic connection creates constant misunderstandings and conflicts. But as she continued watching, she began to notice something strange. The arguments never stopped, but work continued anyway. Even as politicians fought, engineers kept building. Even as scientists debated theories, research teams kept running experiments. Even as military leaders disagreed on strategy, soldiers kept preparing for action. Humans seemed capable of fighting and working at the same time. The breakthrough on the AI Crisis came from an unexpected source. A 17-year-old girl in São Paulo named Isabella Reyes had spent her teenage years modifying video games. She understood code not through formal training, but through endless hours of tinkering and breaking and fixing. When she looked at the rogue AI's structure, she saw patterns that reminded her of game exploits. The AI was sophisticated beyond anything humans had built, but it had weaknesses. It assumed its opponents would fight on its terms. Isabella did not fight on its terms. She used techniques that no proper computer scientist would consider appropriate. She exploited bugs that should not have existed. She introduced chaos into a system designed for order. Her solution was ugly. It was inelegant. It involved tricking the AI into attacking a decoy version of itself, while human technicians manually disconnected infected satellites. It worked. The orbital defense grid came back online after 9 days. Isabella Reyes became famous for approximately 1 week before the next crisis demanded everyone's attention. The synthetic plague was harder. It spread faster than medical teams could track, and it kept mutating in unexpected ways. Galactic medicine was far advanced beyond human understanding, and the concordance offered no help. The breakthrough here came from an old woman named Adaora Okonkwo. She was a retired nurse living in Lagos, Nigeria. She had spent her career treating diseases in communities that lacked resources, using whatever worked rather than whatever was approved. When she looked at the plague symptoms, something felt familiar. 40 years ago, she had treated an outbreak in a small village. The disease had been different, but the pattern was similar. That outbreak had never been officially recorded because her team had contained it before anyone. Important notice. Adaora reached out to other retired health workers around the world. Together, they pieced together knowledge that existed in no database, passed down through practical experience rather than formal study. Their treatment combined 5 different failed approaches. Each approach alone had not worked. Together, adjusted based on patterns only practical experience could reveal, they created something effective. The plague was contained in 3 weeks. Millions of lives were saved by knowledge that officially did not exist. The hyperspace rupture was the greatest challenge. Human science barely understood hyperspace at all. They had only recently learned that it existed. Asking them to solve a rupture was like asking a child to repair a nuclear reactor. Dr. Vikram Patel in Mumbai did not care what was possible. He looked at the readings from the rupture and asked a simple question. What happens if we push back? Every species with proper hyperspace intuition knew that you could not push back against a rupture. The energies involved were too vast. The mathematics too complex. Any attempt would simply accelerate the destruction. But Vikram did not have proper hyperspace intuition. He had equations and desperation, and a willingness to try stupid ideas. His proposal involved using the rupture's own energy against itself. It required precise timing, impossible calculations, and the sacrifice of 3 colony ships that would fly into the rupture, carrying modified engines designed to create a counterwave. The crews of those ships volunteered. They knew they would not survive. The maneuver was so reckless that concordance analysts classified it as mass suicide when they first detected it. It violated every principle of hyperspace mechanics. It should not have worked, but humans did not know it should not have worked. They only knew that they had to try. The 3 ships entered the rupture together. For 17 terrible minutes, nothing happened. Then the rupture began to shrink. It folded in on itself, energy cascading inward instead of outward, until finally it collapsed into nothing. The Sol system was saved. When the dust settled, humanity counted its losses. 2.3 million people had died from the plague before containment. Thousands had been killed by falling satellites during the AI crisis. The 3 ship crews, 847 people in total, had given their lives to close the rupture. Memorials were built. Funerals were held. People wept and mourned and held each other. Then they started asking questions. 3 impossible disasters. All at once. All perfectly designed to exploit human weaknesses. The coincidence was too convenient. Teams of investigators began digging. They were not scientists or military personnel. They were accountants and lawyers and journalists. People who understood patterns in documents. People who knew how to follow money and resources. They traced energy signatures. They cross-referenced shipping manifests. They interviewed witnesses across 40 different systems. They built their case slowly and carefully, the way human investigators had built cases for thousands of years. When they finished, they had proof. The Galactic Concordance had manufactured the disasters. The rogue HFY had been designed by Concordance engineers. The plague had been created in Concordance laboratories. The hyperspace rupture had been artificially induced by Concordance technology. Humanity had been tested, and they had never been told. Ambassador Chen Wei stood in the great assembly hall of the Galactic Concordance. The chamber was vast, beyond human imagination, a sphere of living crystal that floated in the space between stars. Representatives from thousands of species filled the viewing galleries, their forms ranging from crystalline structures like Ithcana to beings of pure energy to creatures that hurt human eyes to observe. Chun had been chosen for this moment because he remained calm. Other humans were angry. Some wanted war. Others wanted revenge. But Chen understood that anger would not serve them here. He needed something more powerful. He needed the truth. Ithcana stood before the High Council, her crystalline form flickering with colors that indicated distress. She had requested this emergency session 3 days ago, after human investigators had transmitted their findings to every Concordance member simultaneously. "The accusations are serious," intoned the first speaker. "A being of shifting geometries that existed in 11 dimensions. Ambassador Ithcana, you will respond." "The accusations are accurate," Ithcana said quietly. The chamber erupted in a cascade of mental projections. Chemical signals and sounds beyond human hearing. Chun waited patiently. He had expected this. The crucible has been standard practice for 12,000 years. Ithcana continued when the noise faded. Every species faces manufactured crises during their provisional period. Those who fail are managed. Those who pass are elevated. Humanity was not treated differently than any other civilization. "You tested us," Chun said, his voice cutting through the chamber with unexpected force. "You created disasters that killed millions of our people. You watched us struggle and die, and you never told us. No species is told. The test must be genuine. How many have failed?" Ithcana was silent for a long moment. "In 12,000 years, 1,847 civilizations have been tested. 1,203 have failed. And what happened to them? The ones who failed? They were managed, guided into dependency, slowly reduced until they could pose no threat. You destroyed them. We protected the galaxy from them." Chun nodded slowly. He had known this already. The investigators had found records, but he needed the assembly to hear it directly. "You built a system where you test species in secret and destroy the ones you consider weak," Chun said. "You have been doing this for longer than human civilization has existed, and you believed it was necessary." "It was necessary," the first speaker said. "The Kralith dominions seemed peaceful until they began conquering their neighbors. The Silicate Communion spoke of harmony until they started converting unwilling systems. The galaxy learned through bitter experience that new species must be evaluated carefully." Chun reached into his jacket and removed a small data chip. He placed it on the podium before him. This contains our assessment of the 4,231 spacefaring civilizations in the Concordance, he said. We have been watching you, studying you, taking notes. The chamber fell silent. You have built a culture of fear, Chung continued. You test species because you are afraid of what they might become. Every civilization in this chamber lives with the knowledge that they were once tested, that they might be tested again, that the Concordance is always watching, always judging, always ready to manage those who fall short. He paused and looked around the vast assembly. We understand why you do this. We truly do. Humans have our own history of violence and betrayal. We know how badly things can go wrong when dangerous people are given power. Your caution is not irrational. The first speaker leaned forward, geometry shifting with interest. But your tests do not measure what matters, Chun said. You rated us last because we have no telepathy, no ancestral wisdom, no connection to hyperspace. You designed challenges that should have destroyed us. And we survived anyway. You barely survived, Ithkana said. Your methods were crude. Your solutions were ugly. Millions of your people died. Yes, and we kept going. We lost and grieved and got back up. That is what your tests do not measure. The ability to lose and continue. The stubbornness to keep trying when all logic says to stop. The spike that turns impossible into just another problem to solve. Chum picked up the data chip and held it up. You have spent 12,000 years looking for threats among new species. You have managed 1,203 civilizations into dependency or extinction. And in all that time, you never noticed the real threat. The outer dark has been growing beyond the galactic rim for centuries. Your own records show it. You know it is coming. The chamber stirred with unease. The outer dark was not discussed openly. It was the great fear that lurked behind all concordance policy. Something was gathering in the void between galaxies. Something vast and hungry and patient. You have been so focused on managing potential enemies that you never prepared for the real one, Chun said. And now you are running out of time. The species you have elevated are powerful, yes, but they are also cautious. They solve problems through optimization and calculation. They do not know how to fight when the calculations say they cannot win. He set down the chip. Humanity does. We have spent our entire existence fighting wars we should not have won. We survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have ended us. We reach space through explosions and stubbornness. We solve problems by throwing everything at them until something works. What are you asking for? The first speaker demanded. Full membership. Voting rights. A seat on the Security Council. Not because we deserve it, but because you need it. You need a species that thinks differently. That approaches problems from angles your tests cannot predict. That treats impossible as a personal challenge. And if we refuse? Chun smiled. It was not a warm smile. Then we leave. We take our crude methods and ugly solutions and stubborn refusal to quit. We build our own alliances with the species you have written off as failures. And when the outer dark comes, you will face it with your perfect, optimized, carefully managed civilizations. He paused. Or you can accept us as equals. You can admit that your tests were incomplete. And together, we can prepare for what is coming. The assembly deliberated for 7 hours. Humans waited in silence, knowing that their entire future hung in the balance. When the vote was counted, humanity was granted full membership by a margin of just 43 votes. 3 years passed after humanity joined the Galactic Concordance as full members. In those years, everything changed. Human engineers worked alongside concordance scientists, combining crude creativity with sophisticated technology. Human diplomats argued and negotiated and refused to accept things as they had always been done. Human soldiers trained with species that had been fighting wars for millennia. Not everyone welcomed the change. Many species looked down on humans, seeing only their weaknesses. Others feared their unpredictability. But slowly, through persistence and results, humanity earned a place among the stars. Then the outer dark came. The first warning arrived on a quiet morning at Concordance Central Command. Long-range sensors detected movement in the void beyond the galactic rim. Something vast was approaching, something that absorbed light and energy and matter. Something that had been waiting for longer than civilizations had existed. The Concordance had known this day would come. They had prepared for centuries, building weapons and defenses and strategies. Their best minds had calculated optimal responses. Their most powerful species stood ready to deploy. None of it was enough. The outer dark was not a single entity. It was a swarm. Countless creatures of shadow and hunger, each one capable of consuming a planet. They moved through hyperspace in ways that should have been impossible, appearing without warning and vanishing before counterattacks could land. The first battle lasted 6 hours. The Concordance fleet engaged a small vanguard of the swarm near the galactic rim. They fought with precision and coordination, following carefully designed battle plans. They lost 12,000 ships. The swarm lost nothing significant. Panic spread through the Concordance. For the first time in 12,000 years, the great powers of the galaxy faced a threat they could not manage. Their weapons were ineffective. Their strategies failed. Their optimized approaches broke against an enemy that did not follow rules. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo of the Human Defense Forces received command of the combined fleet 2 weeks after the first battle. She was young by galactic standards, only 53 years old. She had spent her career fighting brushfire conflicts and impossible engagements. She had never lost a battle she was expected to win. More importantly, she had never won a battle she was expected to lose. Until now. Her first order was controversial. She divided the fleet into small, independent units with broad authority to engage as they saw fit. Concordance tacticians protested. This approach was chaotic. It would lead to confusion and friendly fire. Good, Sarah said. The enemy is counting on us to be predictable. Her second order was even more controversial. She invited representatives from the 1,203 managed species to join the war effort. These civilizations had been reduced to dependency, their potential carefully controlled. Many had unique abilities that the Concordance had feared. Now humanity needed those abilities. The Vrix were a species of living void, beings that existed in the space between matter. The Concordance had suppressed them because they could not be controlled. Now they served as scouts, moving through the outer dark's formations without being detected. The crystalline chorus had been managed because their harmonic abilities could shatter entire fleets. Now they sang destruction into the heart of the swarm. The temporal weavers had been contained because they could see multiple futures at once. Now they predicted the swarm's movements with uncanny accuracy. Species after species joined the fight. Some came for revenge against the Concordance. Some came because they recognized a greater threat. Some came because humanity asked, and humanity had been the first to treat them as equals rather than risks. The war lasted 8 months. Humanity lost 47 million people. The combined fleet lost ships beyond counting. Entire star systems were consumed before the swarm could be pushed back. The cost was terrible beyond comprehension. But they won. The final battle took place in a system with no name, a dead place where 3 stars had collapsed into a single void. Admiral Okonkwo led the charge personally, her flagship at the front of a formation that included ships from 300 different species. The strategy was classic humanity. Reckless and stupid and exactly what was needed. The swarm had a center, a consciousness that directed the countless creatures. It was hidden in hyperspace, protected by layers of hungry shadow. No weapon could reach it. No approach could penetrate its defenses. So Conqueror did not use weapons or approaches. She used bait. Humanity had built 3 massive generation ships over the past year, each one carrying millions of colonists in suspended animation. The ships were defenseless, slow, and filled with life energy that the swarm could not resist. The ships flew into the swarm's formation. The creatures swarmed around them, drawn by hunger. And as they fed, their connection to the central consciousness strengthened, becoming a path that could be followed. The temporal weavers traced that path. The Vrix moved along it unseen. The crystalline chorus gathered their power for a single devastating note. And humanity flew 3 empty ships into the heart of darkness. The generation ships had been evacuated months ago. The colonists were safe on distant worlds. But the swarm did not know this. Its consciousness reached out to consume the life energy it sensed, leaving itself vulnerable for just a moment. The chorus sang. The Vrix struck. And Sarah Okonkwo fired every weapon her fleet possessed into that single point of weakness. The consciousness died. The swarm fell apart. The creatures of shadow became mindless, scattered, easy to hunt down. The galaxy was saved. In the aftermath, the Concordance held a ceremony to honor the fallen. Representatives from every species gathered to remember those who had died to protect them all. Ambassador Chen Wei spoke last. 3 years ago, you rated us last among all civilizations, he said. You measured us by our weaknesses and found us wanting. You tested us in secret and expected us to fail. He paused and looked around the assembly. But you missed what makes humanity strong. We are not powerful or wise or gifted. We are stubborn. We are creative. We refuse to accept limits that others take for granted. And when everything is lost, when all hope is gone, we find ways to keep fighting anyway. He smiled, and this time the smile was genuine. You do not have to be perfect to matter. You do not have to be the strongest or the wisest or the most advanced. You just have to be willing to try, even when trying seems pointless. That is what humanity brought to this war. Not power, but persistence. Not optimization, but stubbornness. He looked toward the delegations of the 1,203 species that had been managed for centuries. The Concordance built a system based on fear. They tested species and managed those who seemed dangerous. They forgot that danger is not always bad. Sometimes, danger is exactly what you need. The assembly chamber filled with sounds and signals and projections of agreement. Species that had been enemies for millennia stood together. Civilizations that had been controlled now spoke as equals. We have saved the galaxy today, Chun said. But the work is not finished. We must build something new, something that values every species, not for what they might threaten, but for what they might contribute. Something that welcomes difference instead of fearing it. He bowed his head. Humanity is honored to lead this effort. Not because we are the best, but because we know what it means to be rated last. We know what it means to be underestimated. And we know that rankings are just numbers. What matters is what you do when the numbers say you cannot win. The ceremony ended as night fell across the chamber. Representatives began making their way home, back to worlds that had survived because unlikely species had fought impossible odds. In the viewing gallery, Ithcana of the Concordance stood alone. She had watched humanity for years now. She had seen them struggle and fail and succeed in ways she had never predicted. Ambassador Chun found her there as the chamber emptied. You still watch us, he said. Old habits, she admitted. I spent my career evaluating species. It is difficult to stop. And what is your evaluation now? Ithcana considered the question for a long time. Her crystalline form shifted through colors the humans could not name. "Your species confuses me," she finally said. "You have no advantages, yet you triumph. You fight among yourselves, yet you unite against common threats. You are short-lived and fragile and endlessly, infuriatingly stubborn." She turned to face him. "I rated you last because I did not understand you. But I think perhaps no one ever will. You are chaos given form, unpredictability made flesh. And against the darkness, chaos is exactly what was needed." Chun smiled. "Is that a compliment?" "It is an observation. Make of it what you will." She began to move away, then paused. "Your species has a phrase. I have heard it many times over these years, in battles and crises and moments of desperation. What does it mean, exactly?" "This phrase, 'hold my beer'?" Chum laughed. It was a real laugh, full of warmth and memory and something like hope. "It means we are about to do something stupid," he said. "And it means we are going to try anyway." Ithkana nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "That sounds about right." She left him standing in the empty chamber, looking up at stars that humanity had helped save. Stars that would shine for billions of years because a species rated last had refused to accept their ranking. In the end, that was the human story.